The president of the Central African Republic pleads for international help to stop a rebel offensive. What's triggered the fresh crisis between the government and rebel forces? And why does France refuse to use its troops to defend the government of its former colony? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to another Inside Story. In Doha, I'm Adrian Finighan. The Central African Republic is in crisis as rebels advance towards the capital Bangui. They're threatening to topple the president, Francois Bozize. They began their offensive with the capture of strategic mining towns 2 weeks ago. The Central African Republic's president has asked France and the US for help, as Ian Bruce reports.
Another demonstration in Bangui, calling on the former colonial power to step in. The latest march was peaceful. On Wednesday, they'd thrown stones at the French embassy and torn down the flag. President Francois Bozize apologized for that, but he repeated their call. Our French cousins and the United States, the great powers, he told the crowd, must help us push back the rebels. France already has 200 soldiers in the country, but the French leader has made it clear they won't intervene.
Generally speaking, if we are there, it's not to protect a regime, but to protect our citizens and our interests.
The others aren't keen either. The UN is pulling out non-essential staff, and the US has already closed down its embassy. The rebels of the Seleka coalition have advanced rapidly since launching the current offensive on December the 10th. They've captured 4 regional capitals, including Ndeli in the north, Bambari in the nation's centre, the mining hub of Bria, and just on Tuesday, the western town of Kagabandoro. Some reports now put them just 75 kilometres from the capital. The rebel coalition emerged from a series of armed groups that signed separate peace deals in 2007 and last year. Now they accuse the government of going back on its word.
They were supposed to get money and also to benefit from reinsertion programs. And this apparently did not materialize. That's why they kept their weapons.
For the moment, the presence of troops from neighbouring Chad seems to be deterring the rebels from marching on Bangui. But fearing the worst, many civilians are already fleeing their homes.
They flee to their fields, which means they basically go next to their crops and just stay there without any shelter and with the minimal drinking water that they can find in the area, and with a bit of food. It's dire conditions.
The Central African Republic has seen waves of displaced people before. The worry now is that a failure to reach a negotiated solution could produce another humanitarian crisis. Ian Bruce, Al Jazeera.
Well, joining us now on the line from Bangui is Cyriaque Gonda, a former State Minister for Communication in the Central African Republic. Thank you for being with us on Inside Story, sir. What's the situation in Bangui now?
No, the situation is calm right now. We are getting little rest. Everything is, coming from very slowly to order. But in Bangui right now, within the capital, there is no problem at all. As you know, the people are at 300 and 400 kilometers away from the capital. So there is no problem, and the capital is militarily secured by the armed force of Central African Republic.
So how do you see this situation progressing? Can a peaceful resolution to this crisis be reached?
There will definitely be a peaceful resolution to this situation right now that our country is facing, as long as, each party respects whatever has been said at the Head of State Summit in N'Djamena. And the Central African Republic is respecting its part, and we are expecting the rebellion to really lead by the decision made by the Head of State in N'Djamena, which requires from them to go back and stay where they were coming from to take over some cities.
As France and the United States have made it clear that they will not intervene, is there any sign that the president is prepared to negotiate?
No, there is no problem. The president did not ask the United States to intervene militarily. But what the president is requesting is that the United States, especially since we have a diplomatic relations, the United States has to use the diplomatic voices, diplomatic ways to the Security Council, to diplomatic relations with France and other countries to help solve this problem. So there is no negotiation that has to set forth between Central African Republic and the United States, because we are not expecting the United States to intervene militarily. We never did so in our country.
Mr. Gonda, thank you very much indeed, sir, for being with us. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, what's triggered the fresh crisis in the Central African Republic? Well, hopefully to answer that question, we're joined by our guests today. From Paris, Louis Keumayou, who is the president of the Pan-African Press Association. From Washington, D.C., we're joined by Magloire Kolisso, a former press attache to President Bouzizi, but who's now seeking asylum in the U.S. Also, from Paris, we're joined by Emmanuel Dupuy, the president of the Institute for Prospective and Security Studies in Europe. Gentlemen, welcome to you all. We'll begin with you, Louis, if we can. What lies at the heart of this crisis? I mean, who are these rebels? Is this all about unfulfilled agreements surrounding peace agreements, or is there more to it than that?
Well, the fact is that Seleka in the language, in the Sango, who is the national language in Central African Republic, that means alliance. It's the coalition of many small rebel organizations that were holding the northern part of Central African Republic, and now they decided to go forward and try to reach Bangui now in way to maybe push the president out, or just explain what they are expecting from the president, because there were some settlements after the negotiation they held in Libreville in 2007, and they consider those agreements were not respected by the President Bouzizi. So after the negotiation they had also with the Chadian president, not Issane Habré, but Idriss Déby Itno, they decided to go forward and obtain the gain of the pursuit directly in Bangui.
Magloire Kolisso, to what extent is President Bouzizi to blame for this crisis? If he'd been more open to dialogue earlier, would we be in this position today?
Let me just explain in the beginning. In 2003, when Bouzizi make the coup d'etat against Ange Félix Patassé, it was with the same rebel. The same three rebels now against his powers, calling Alliance and Sango Seleka, is the same person. So that the same people came with him, take the push, take the power in Bangui, and now because he didn't respect all the engagement he take with those people, now the people decide to come against him. He did that in 2005, in 2007, and now in 2012.
Emmanuel Dupuy, why won't France intervene? Is President Hollande right to say that it is of no business of his to intervene in the internal business of another country?
Well, President Hollande made it quite clear that the first reason why we engaged the 250 soldiers to protect the embassy and our 1,200 citizens is because the first mission dedicated to the French troop is to not protect the regime, he made it quite clear, and he mentioned this, but to protect the security of our citizens. We have to take into account that there's been a reform of the defense agreements that France had with its old colonies in 2008, in February 2008, when President Sarkozy made it quite clear that now we have peace partnership and not peace agreement, and it's not of our business to assess the legitimacy of a government or not, and to protect this government. I have to say that there is the French detachment who is present at the airports of Bangui but there is troops dedicated to fulfill this mission, which is the Chadian troops, and they are supposed to prevent any type of intervention and move of the rebels.
Okay, Magloire Kolisso in Washington, D.C., you wanted to come in there?
What I'm going to say is concerned about the position of Bozizé. It's got two options now. So the first option is to not fight against the rebel, to start a negotiation, but the second position of Bozizé is to fight against the rebel inside Bangui. Why I say that? Because the General Bozizé is a military guy, so he's not political guy, he's a military thinking. So I think he's waiting to fight with those rebels inside Bangui, because if you are waiting on the only on the diplomatic way, we know gonna get issue or what's going on in Bangui on the moment.
Louis Keumayou, what's prevented the rebels moving on Bangui so far? As far as we know, they're pretty close, up to 70 kilometers, although according to Syriac Gonda we spoke to earlier, he says they're a little bit further away than that. But why haven't they marched on Bangui? Is it the presence of troops from Chad, or as their spokesman says, there's no need because they've already taken control of great swathes of the country?
No, let's just remember that there have been negotiations held by the Economic Community of the Central African Republics concerning the case of the Central African Republic. That meeting has been held, I think, in N'Djamena. That is not far away now from 1 month. Then there were some agreements. They sent troops. There were troops already from the FOMAC. I don't remember how they translated it into English, but there are some forces from the Central African Republic states who are intervening already in the country. There are also the Chadian troops who are coming to complete the action. They are coming to help those troops in way to intervene and make build a kind of barrier between the rebels and Bangui. So there is something already going on the ground. But there are two problems only. You remember Eric Massy is the son of Charles Massy, who was a former minister of Bozizé, who has gone in the opposition and who then disappeared. No one has any idea of where he is now. He is probably dead. And they want to make clear what happened with him. This is the first question. The second point is that there is no credibility to Mr. Bozizé now, because it is not the first time they are holding negotiations with him. And rebels consider he doesn't have any, they cannot pay any confidence into what he will be saying into a negotiation, because there have already been negotiations. He hasn't moved on from his position, so they are not confident with him. They can be conducting negotiations in Libreville, in N'Djamena, or anywhere else. That won't have any result by the point of view of the rebels. So it is very difficult now to know how the things are going to move on the ground, but I'm afraid there will be a statu quo from now going.
Emmanuel Dupuy, what do you make of what you've just heard there? And tell me whether you think the President will be able to see out his mandate, which is due to expire in 2016. How do you see this situation progressing from here? Can it be resolved through dialogue?
Well, I think there's one thing to add to what my colleague said, is that for the meeting, the peace talks which are going to take place in Libreville will also take into account the opposition. It's not only the rebels and the government and sort of using the international community or calling for the international community. You have to take into account the civil society and the opposition leaders. Now, as we are speaking, there is an important meeting taking place, I think, in Bangui, but I'm not sure, with these opposition leaders. So that's one issue to take in consideration. And as it was already mentioned, I think Bozizé has promised a lot since 2003. He was supposed to take in consideration a certain number of promises that he made in 2007, and now the rebels are just fulfilling what they always said, saying that if these promises were not on the table, then they were going to march through the country. And this is why, again, it's very difficult to call for external intervention, as external actors such as the United States and France has always called for dialogue and to have these talks with all of the actors of the country, amongst which the rebels. So I don't see how President Bozizé can avoid any type of Central African dialogue.
Magloire Kolisso, do you agree with that? I'm just interested to know why the armed forces of the Central African Republic haven't been able to stop what the rebels have done so far. Will they be able to prevent the rebels marching on Bangui if they choose to do so?
Concern about the young people in the story of my country, because I'm from Central African Republic. Just remember, the Emperor Bokassa coming by coup d'etat. After him, it was Dako by coup d'etat. And then after, you go, the General Kolimba was also coming by coup d'etat. And then after General Kolimba, the first election, it was with Félix Patassé. And after Félix Patassé, it was General Bozizé by coup d'etat. So, in our story, and the mind of the people, the young people over there, they always think that's the only way that you can, manage the power, take the power by force. So everyone to be a president. Even you put in on the position of a government or deputy, at the end, they are thinking to do something to be president.
Okay, let's just tell you a little bit about...
That's the problem.
Yeah, I just want to tell our viewers a little about the Central African Republic. It's a landlocked nation. It has deposits of gold, diamonds and uranium. It gained its independence from France some 50 years ago, but it's one of the poorest countries in the world. It's seen several coups and rebellions. The rebel coalition, known as Seleka, accuses the government of not complying with the terms of a 2007 peace deal, as we've been hearing. That deal promised the release of political prisoners and cash for fighters who laid down their arms. Groups in the area say that they've been left out of profiting from the region's rich resources. And France has around 200 soldiers in the capital, but says the troops are there to protect its own citizens. Louis, you mentioned a few moments ago Chad. I'm just wondering how involved in the politics of the Central African Republic Chad is. It is, I suppose, in its interests to have a stable neighbour on its southern border.
All of the countries in Central Africa need that peaceful country, but Chad is the country who helped General Bozizé to succeed in the coup d'etat he organized. France, and in a certain way, Libya also, because there were, during that period, a partnership between Félix Patassé and Muammar Gaddafi, the former Libyan leader. So Chad has a very important role in the victory of General Bozizé, and they still are there. They call them the liberators, and they are still in Bangui up to now. Even in the presidency, you can find them with the uniforms of the Chadian army. So they are helping. They are helping President Bozizé in ruling, in getting into power, staying on power, and I think up to now, even if the relationships is not on the same level every time, they are really helping him. And the second point I wanted to mention is the last presidential elections were not so fair. And what is making the opposition, military and political opposition, very doubtful concerning the general is that they are not sure he will leave the power as promised by the law on 2014. So there is a certain flu entertained around this opportunity he could have to change the rule and once more become president after 2014. And it is a really big deal now during these negotiations.
Emmanuel Dupuy, there have been various international attempts to disarm the rebels, including the ongoing 400-strong micropack stabilization mission. The EU has pumped more than, 100 million euros into the country. Why haven't these initiatives worked?
Well, it's a difficult task, first of all, and I would like to add to what was said before, and responding partially to your question, that there's a certain number of rebel agenda around the neighboring countries. The neighboring countries like Sudan and Chad have also to deal with these rebels, though there is an ongoing relations between these rebels in the northeast part of Central Republic and the southeast part of Chad. Again, the European Union has done what it could do with this MICOPAX mission. Again, it's a difficult situation because we, France and the international community have always said that we're willing and basing our relations to President Bozizé and asking him to fulfill what was promised in 2007. So it's very difficult to answer to your question because the same question can be raised in DRC, the same question can be raised in a certain number of countries. European Union and the international community have done what they could do, and again, they are not here to be an intervention force or to interpose themselves between rebels and the government.
Magloire Kolisso, we've talked a lot about the players here, the rebels, the politicians, the former colonial power, the EU. We haven't, of course, talked about the people of the Central African Republic, many of whom are desperately poor, displaced and frightened. The UN's representative in Bangui said that people are petrified about what could happen.
The people, just concerned about the story in my country, about 70% of the population living outside Bangui. And they didn't have education. So they just follow what the aides of the government say. They say that you go on the left, you go on the left. You go on the right, you go on the right. And concerned about the people over there, they do like before Bozizé. They consider like a liberator because the 15th of March, the push by against Félix Patassé, a lot of people support Bozizé. But after the election in 2011, no fair election, the people now don't really like him. So they're afraid of his regime. A lot of people, as my concern, asking for refugee in France, in Europe, in America. So for the moment, the people are tired of the coup d'etat.
Just one final question.
They just want to end.
One final question
to
Louis, who talked about the involvement of Chad, the proximity of Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo to the Central African Republic. Just to complicate matters further, am I right in thinking that the Lord's Resistance Army from Uganda are also operating in parts of the Central African Republic?
The fact is that the northern part, the northeast part of the Central African Republic was a no man's land. There was no one intervening there. So there are many rebels who came and took place in the northern part of Central African Republic, and that is why it is very difficult now to know precisely who's operating in that coalition called Seleka. They can come from Darfur, they can come from Uganda, they can come from anywhere else, from Libya, why not? And there is really a zone where they should try to make clear who's really operating, and then when we will know precisely what's happening there, maybe we can know where are coming the arms they've taken to play, and who is helping them, if there is foreign help, as the President Bozizé said.
Gentlemen, I'm afraid that we've left more questions than answers at the end of this Inside Story, but time is against us. Thank you very much indeed. We'll have to end our discussion there. In Washington, D.C., Magloire Kolisso. In Paris, Louis Keumayou and Emmanuel Dupuy. And thank you very much indeed for watching this edition of Inside Story. As always, if you want to send us your feedback, email us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. In Doha, I'm Adrian Finighan. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again. Bye for now.